All right. Well, to our grass-fed marketing secrets Facebook group and our private clients, hey, welcome. We have an incredible interview lined up today with Larry Ingrassia. Larry, uh, for years, was the senior editor for the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Los Angeles Times, really serving as an editor for economics and business. So Larry's coming with us today from a background of journalism, but he's also written an incredible book that I cannot recommend highly enough called the
Thanks,
billion,
Jared.
yeah, the $1 billion Brand Club. And let me get this subtitle right. It's how Dollar Shave Club, Warby Parker, and other disruptors are remaking what we buy. And Larry, we're really excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thanks for inviting me. Really looking forward
Absolutely.
to talk about it.
So I was just telling Larry, as a copywriter, so all of us here, right? We're selling our grass-fed products direct to consumer, but behind that is copywriting. And so as a copywriter and all these groups that I'm in, we've been talking about this book for 2 years now. It's been out 2 years.
Yep.
It's been just one of those things we talk about. And so lately, guys, in this group, we've talked a lot about the mechanics behind what we do and how to write copy to sell your stuff direct to consumer. This conversation today is going to be a lot about possibility thinking and mindset. What did I just say? Mindset shifting, so that you can see what's possible with the brand. And so we're just really excited to jump this conversation today, Larry. And man, I'm just all right. If you're ready, I'm ready.
Let's go.
Okay, so you spent years as a senior editor, writing copy, chasing down stories for economics and business for obviously the largest newspaper publications on planet Earth, which sounds fun, right? So what made you decide to, as you're retiring, chase down this story and make a book out of it?
Well, it's an interesting backstory, Jared. So, let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back to like 2010, 2011. And there was a friend of my daughter who had an idea to start a company online to sell razors and blades. And I heard about it and I thought, you know what, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. His idea was to compete with Gillette. Now, Gillette is one of the best known brands in the world. I mean, really, it's got great marketing, it's got a great product. And for years, or actually not just years, decades, many decades, it had a market share hovering around 70 to 75%, kind of not just in the US and the rest of the world. So I didn't say it to my daughter's friend, a guy named Michael Dubin, but I thought, this is not going to go anywhere. How can you possibly compete against Gillette? Then fast forward to 2016. I was driving on my way to work and listening to the radio, NPR. And I hear that Unilever has bought Dollar Shave Club, this company which didn't even have a name when I first heard about it, Dollar Shave Club, for $1 billion. And I literally kind of grabbed the steering wheel, kind of had it, but I kind of tied it to make sure I wasn't going to swerve. And I said to myself, Michael did it. Michael, expletive deleted, did it. I mean, I really, kind of was in disbelief about that. I had followed it and I knew that he was doing reasonably well, but this was really a huge announcement, kind of an earth-shaking announcement. And my second thought after, kind of saying he did it was, how did he do it? I mean, again, my journalistic instincts kicked in. I was just like, kind of how did the impossible, taking on Gillette become possible? Because in fact, by that time, because of Dollar Shave Club and a second entrant called Harry's in the direct-to-consumer razor brand, Gillette's market share had dropped to the low 50% range. I mean, this was something that, kind of had that for, and moreover, in response to the competition, Gillette actually dropped its prices by about 10 to 15%. Again, unheard of. And I was like, okay, I just want to, my curiosity came in. I was, getting ready toward retiring from daily newspaper, and I was thinking, oh, I'd like to write a book sometime. And I was like, this is like a real game changer. Something has happened in the world, and I'd like to understand it and maybe write about it. And of course, when I started thinking about it, then I realized that all sorts of new brands had been started and were disrupting, kind of existing players, kind of long dominant players. And so that was the kernel of the idea. It's like, what is happening and why and how is it happening?
Absolutely. So I love that story because it really kind of sets up what the whole book is about. And it's how these local Davids are going against corporate Goliaths.
Goliath,
Right?
yeah, absolutely.
So I love that imagery there with that. And that's really what happens. So in our industry, guys, for those of us that are listening, our Gillette is a JBS, a Cargill, a Tyson. Like these are the people who really are competitors in one way or another, and they're definitely industry giants. But then we even have, the Walmarts and large grocery chains who we're going up against. So what are some of the pieces of education that needs to be in place? Because there's a shift that has to happen for this to work for somebody. You have to be on the front end of educating a consumer how to now do business with you with something they're already used to buying. So if we're taking, whether it's glasses, whether it's shaving product, how do you get somebody to make that shift as a consumer? What have you seen that's kind of been a process to get people to do that?
So kind of all, and obviously, as you mentioned at the start, kind of your business is a little bit different than this business, okay? But in the end, I think that there are things that you have in common. And in particular, with these companies, it was trying to, spotting a problem and solving a problem. I mean, for Michael Dubin, it was, razors are very expensive, and you know what, they're always I'm always running out of them and getting a dull shave because I'm not thinking about doing this. And so, kind of how do I solve that problem? Well, I kind of outsource. I buy a good quality razor from somebody overseas. I put my brand on it, and I sell it by subscription. So you're getting it, kind of every month. You're never going to run out of them. And, by the way, the great thing about the subscription is that it's a recurring revenue, kind of once you capture a consumer, because obviously reaching consumers and getting them to buy the first time is, kind of that cost of acquisition, customer acquisition is one of the big barriers to entry. But it was across the board. The guys at Warby Parker eyeglasses did pretty much the same thing. Now their challenge was a little bit different, a little bit more complicated, and kind of maybe can help the people in your business, kind of farmers, think about it, because they weren't asking somebody to kind of send kind of pay them $5 to $10 a month for kind of razors, and it's like, okay, kind of I don't like the razor, I could just they're asking somebody to say kind of eyeglasses, hey, my vision, I want to get kind of a good kind of pair of glasses. I want them to look nice on me, and it's going to cost me, kind of $100, $200, $300, depending on this prescription. But I can get it a lot less from these guys, but it had better work. So they had to think, and their thing was, okay, I'm going to send you the frames, kind of with a blank in it. So kind of, I'll send 5 frames to you that you can take a look at. Put them on, because who buys glasses without kind of seeing how they look on your face? And then you tell me which frame you like, and then we'll kind of send you the kind of a new frame with you send us your prescription, and that takes care of it. And oh, by the way, if you don't like it for any reason, we'll take it back. Kind of, again, that's kind of part of that implicit. When you're kind of dealing with customers for the first time, they can't walk into your store, you want to have that connection. They were selling on price. Another company, Third Love Bra Company, again, started, kind of, there was a couple, husband and wife, kind of both had been, kind of working in retail and or for technology companies. And, one night they wanted to get into e-commerce. They didn't know where. And she's rummaging through her bra drawer and said, you know what, I don't have one that's stylish and also comfortable. And they got the idea to come up with half size bras, kind of, they're going to be better fitting. And oh, by the way, we're actually, unlike Dollar Shave Club or Warby Parker, they're actually charging more than Victoria's Secret, than the average thing. But they're saying, We think it'll be worth it. And let you kind of try it, kind of have it for 30-day free trial. If you don't like it, you can return it, get your money back. So again, looking for a problem solved. And I think that, kind of an entrepreneur needs to say, what am I doing that is solving a problem that gives a unique proposition, whether it's greater customer service, whether it's quality, whether it's price, maybe it's a combination of all those things. But it should be kind of going into it's like, I'm solving a problem. How am I going to solve the problem? How am I going to make you feel good about this transaction? Because in the end, that does a couple things. One, you keep coming back. Two, you tell your friends, I got a great shave, kind of it's like half the price, and it comes right to my door and I don't have to worry about running out. So I think that this is kind of one of the things that smart entrepreneurs do. They're in the end solving a problem, providing a product or a service at a price that is fair. It doesn't have to be the lowest price. I think it's like, kind of think of value is the best way to think about it.
Absolutely. It's interesting. So in our business, we teach because most of us are running very small businesses where we can't compete on price, right? We can't compete with a volume business. We need to really make it up for in margin. And you tell an incredible story. Okay, you tell tons of great stories, but the Warby Parker one especially. These guys had. Do you want to tell the story? Price believability is where I'm going.
Yeah. Kind of they said, you know what? First of all, there was a higher price out there, but a lot of on the price believability was okay. Interesting when they were students at Wharton Business School in Philadelphia when they came up with this idea. In fact, they were doing it as a class project, and kind of they were intrigued enough. They went to the professor and said, hey, what do you think about our idea? And first of all, one of the things he says is, you got to get the glasses in the hands because nobody's going to buy it unless they kind of feel the frames and kind of see what they look like. But they also said, hey, we think we can do this for kind of $50 or $75 because these frames, we know we can kind of source the frames, even a good quality frame for kind of a few bucks. And he said, you know what? Before you kind of think about kind of such a low price, is somebody going to believe they get a good product at that price? So they actually did, surveys. I think they may have used Facebook and kind of friends to do surveys. If we kind of priced it at, kind of this and this and this and this, I think from 50 up to, kind of 250, how would you feel about it? And they came back as for the basic prescription, not a complicated prescription, because obviously they charge a little bit more for the, complicated prescriptions. For the basic prescription, which is, kind of 80% of what they sell, it was like around $100 for the right thing. If it was lower than $100, people actually kind of would be reluctant to buy it. Kind of, I'm not sure that's going to be any good. If it was higher, then, kind of, so I think finding that, kind of that price believability, kind of, people are looking again. I talk about value instead of price. People want value for the money. They know that, kind of, they're not going to, kind of get the highest value for, kind of a very low price. Okay. But they can, kind of believe that they're going to get a good value for a medium price. And, oh, by the way, they know that they're going to get, kind of, so like Gillette's quality is great. Okay. I would say, having used all sorts of razors, Gillette's quality shave is better than Dollar Shave Club. But Dollar Shave Club is probably 80 to 90% as good for 50% of the price. Okay? That's a good value proposition for many consumers. Not everybody. Some people are going, hey, I don't care. I'm going to pay $5 for, kind of each cartridge. Kind of, but there are a lot of people out there saying, you know what? 80 to 90% is good for half the price is a great value proposition. That's for me. And then you just have to reach those people. Tricky, but you have to reach those people.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at it from, most of our client standpoint, as they're coming in, they kind of panic because they think, well, now I'm competing with a local grocer, Walmart, other farmers who are willing to sell it cheaper, and then they're competing on price. Whereas if you can just convey and educate on the value, suddenly the price point isn't the biggest issue. And for most people, price is not why they buy, right? They're looking for a value, but value doesn't always correlate with how much they're paying. It's how much you're delivering.
It's quality. It's value is a kind of it's a mixture of quality and price. It's kind of that's why I really like to think in terms of value. You delivering good value for the price. So that yeah, I agree. That's a very good point, Jared.
That's a great distinction. Love that. So, so what? Before I ask this next question, I'm wondering because you really approach this from a very personal way of how you gathered these stories. This wasn't just an interview on a phone. This wasn't just collecting articles and then pouring over them and conjecture. You actually spent time in the facilities with the founders. What was it? What was your process for gathering data and intelligence to write this book?
Yeah, you wanted to have people who would open up about not just their successes, but also the challenges that they faced and times that they had to pivot, the difficulties they had to deal with in getting it right. Because I think that for most entrepreneurs, it's the rare story, and I think Dollar Shave Club was one of these that kind of took off. But for most entrepreneurs, it's a rare story that everything goes smoothly from the start, right? You anticipate that something is going to go wrong, and then learn from what that goes wrong, and then figure out, okay, how am I going to address it when it goes wrong? And I think that is really kind of a critical thing. So one of the things I wanted when I was talking to people, I wanted them to really open up, to let me in. There were a couple of companies that I talked to, and they were like, okay, we'll spend an hour with you on the phone and kind of then write a chapter in the book. And I was like, hey, thanks very much. I really want to get in depth because I think for this book to have value to a general reader, but also to kind of people who are in business, I'm going to have to kind of peel back the layers of the onion to figure out kind of what you did. And the other thing I wanted to make sure that I did was to focus on kind of there's not one element of its success in a startup, right? They're usually kind of a variety of elements, and especially when you're talking about e-commerce and direct to consumer. So one of the great things about e-commerce, direct to consumer, is that it lowered the barriers to entry, and because of technology, and enabled companies to compete on startups on a much more even playing field. Okay, you didn't have to go kind of on bended knee to a retailer and say, will you please take my product and put it on your shelves, because the internet has unlimited shelf space. You can sell kind of directly. You could actually deliver the product for a reasonable price direct to consumer because there was a logistics revolution that was going on, making all this possible. And finally, marketing, although we can talk about that, it's changed a little bit. Early on in the e-commerce area, marketing via social media in particular, but also on Google was very cheap. You didn't have to spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to kind of launch a product. You could, with Facebook, you could be very targeted. You could tell them the demographic that you wanted to reach, and then kind of very focused. And you could test. You could try kind of 8, 10, 15 different messages, and then you could see which one is getting the best response. I mean, you could never do that with your newspaper ad or with kind of a television ad. Kind of that's kind of more like a general. You're hitting a bit of a mass audience. And so it was a combination of all these things. And so I wanted to kind of each chapter, instead of just being a story about the same story about this company, that company, I wanted to say kind of a different element of how they tackled those different issues. Kind of what were the marketing challenges? What was this is different for you, but kind of if you're a company making a product, a startup company making a product, how do you find kind of a good and you're not going to make it yourself. Your farmers make it themselves, right? They kind of raise the cattle. But how do you find that? So each of the chapters, and there was marketing chapter, there was a kind of logistics chapter, and as far as delivery and everything. So very much kind of trying to get the stories of the entrepreneurs, how they thought through the difficulties that they faced, and kind of in some cases, and there were some companies that didn't do kind of not everybody's going to succeed. Being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. But so it was a mixture of both the challenges and the successes and occasional failures.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you obviously getting to rub shoulders with these entrepreneurs, with all of the research that you had to do on top of that. What were some of the reasons that you could distinct that some of them may not have worked out? Like we'll call them the failures, harsh term, but what were some of the commonalities you saw amongst the failures?
So there were a couple of things. Kind of one, I did a chapter on startups in the luggage area, and there were several of them. I think that the biggest thing was, well, there were a couple of things. One was an ability to pivot and to think about your business a little bit more broadly. So there was one company that was an early leader that was just selling basically suitcases online, several different sizes of suitcases. One of its competitors said, okay, that's great, but we want to sell accessories. We want to sell, kind of liners or, kind of tote bags or whatever. That was a really smart, and we want to think of our product as a brand as opposed to just a product. Okay, so they were the one that did better and survived. And why was that? Well, again, getting back to that cost of acquisition, the first company, they would sell you something, but you would never come back to them because basically they were just selling suitcases. The second company would sell you a suitcase, but then they had your email. Okay, once again, you have the advantage of direct-to-consumer is that you have their email. You're kind of constantly in contact. You could send them, oh, would you like to buy? So they would then kind of have, kind of a tote bag or a gym bag or whatever, or, different kinds of things. They would come up with all sorts of accessories, maybe for, that would sell for $50 or $25 or whatever, in addition to the $150 or $200 or $250 suitcase. Okay, but the cost of acquiring that customer, because they'd already been acquired, was very low. It's just a matter of sending out more emails. So all of a sudden, their revenue wasn't as dependent on one product as the other. In another area, and I think this was, it turned out to be a really challenging area, was mattresses, foam mattresses, which were a brilliant idea because mattresses cost, it's a terrible experience going into a mattress store, right? And they charge you an arm and a leg, and you get it at home, and then you kind of decide, oh, this doesn't really feel good, I want to return it. And the mattress store says, great, that'll be a 20% restocking fee. And it's like, oh my God, I just spent $3,000 on a mattress, I'm going to spend $600 to send it back to them. It's like, no way, I'll just my back will suffer, kind of for the next 10 years. So these guys kind of said, okay, we're going to send you a foam mattress. It's going to be, kind of half to a third the price. It's going to be, and if you don't like it, you can return it. The challenge there was, it turns out that the barrier to entry was so low there, anybody could get into it. You could find a contract mattress making foam, and so it got very crowded very quickly. And so it was really important that these companies figured out, kind of what is my distinct proposition, and it's, kind of not just price, and it's going to have to be quality in a certain area, and again, the accessories. But even then, I think it's been challenging for everybody because it's so crowded. And I don't know if that's something that, kind of obviously people have a lot of different places they can buy beef, right? But I think that you need to think about your product, more than just this is, kind of a piece of meat that's going to be at the table, even though that's the most important thing. Right, kind of, is it going to be good? Is it going to be tender? Whatever. I think that you want to create, kind of a connection with the consumer, and that's important. Kind of. So Dollar Shave Club created this connection with consumers because there was this hilarious video, and if people haven't seen it, they ought to see it. Just kind of go Michael Dubin Dollar Shave Club video, which has been viewed more than 26 million times. Okay, and it helped establish it as kind of a hip brand that, kind of you as a young person might connect to, might be interested in. Okay, so I think that, people call direct to consumer, and I like to kind of also call it connect to consumer. So to the extent that you can create a community, kind of a like-minded community, that is something that then you can kind of get past a little bit the price. People are going to come back. They're going to recommend it to their friends. And also you can, kind of creating this sense of community. And I think that, into some of your farmers, kind of local buying, kind of something that is like is grass fed, right? Kind of you can in a time when people really care more and more, especially young people, I think, care more and more about what I'm buying, where is it coming from? And is it, kind of produced sustainably? That stuff can really help create a message in a brand identity that you're not going to get the same way for the most part at a supermarket, again, I haven't seen the marketing of what some of your people do, but I would imagine that doing that, and then kind of figuring out, okay, how can I branch out a little bit? So I'm not just selling kind of this, kind of maybe I should sell, sausage links or whatever. I mean, that's sure kind of how you do that, but again, thinking a little bit more strategically about, kind of what I'm doing as a brand, creating a sense of community, kind of selling sustainability, as opposed to just a product. The companies that had the biggest challenges were I think the companies that thought, kind of really, they had like, kind of tunnel vision. I'm selling a product here. You're selling more than a product. You're selling, kind of a connection.
I love that. So, man, so many other questions could have spun out of that, but I want to keep going in this direction a little bit.
Yep.
So of the entrepreneurs, specifically their character, their personalities, maybe some of the way they think about success and decision making, have you noticed any commonalities between the ones that really were able to make it work in this business model?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, I think that one thing that entrepreneurs can do that it's hard for a big company to do is to think outside the box. Again, this is a little bit different for kind of people in your business. But one of the things that struck me as really interesting is that so many of the entrepreneurs in the direct-to-consumer brand startups knew little or nothing about the product that they were selling initially. Kind of certainly, kind of Dollar Shave Club, Michael Dubin, the guys who started Warby Parker, even the husband and wife team that kind of started the bra company, the guys who started the mattress companies. They kind of, as consumers, they were very familiar with these products, and I think that helped inform them what they wanted to do. But kind of, they hadn't made it. They didn't know the right way to do things. But you'd think, well, that must be a real disadvantage. In fact, it was an advantage. Kind of not being constrained by, oh, we can't do that because it's never been done that way. Or we wouldn't. How could we possibly do that? Can be an advantage. Now, I think that you kind of actually have to use common sense. But I think that it really benefited, kind of people to say, I'm going to put myself in the shoe of the consumer as opposed to the shoe of the producer of the company, especially the big company, which has all sorts of constraints in dealing with. And as a consumer, what about the product that's on the market? What about the experience? So it's not just a product. What about the experience on the market that kind of frustrates me? How would I make it better if I were the boss? Okay, by the way, you can be the boss now, okay? You can be the boss of you. But the boss of you kind of can actually kind of get past a lot of that stuff. What is the marketing message that would resonate to me? Again, what is the product? What are the features of the product? How would I change the product? There are all those little things that you have to think of. But it's actually, in some ways, maybe you might reach the point of saying, oh, well, that's not possible to do it that way. But when you start with this kind of very open attitude, kind of, and I'm trying to solve a problem, there are things that I'm frustrated with, that actually is something that I would, kind of encourage people to really think that was a very important thing. And the second thing I think was being openness about, kind of marketing and new channels of marketing. Now, obviously, Facebook was very cheap early on. It's become much more expensive to advertise on, to kind of reach that. And why has it become more expensive? Because it's so successful. Basically, Facebook is a marketplace where the prices are set, kind of based on, kind of the demand. It's a little bit like a stock market. So it was delivering so much bang for the buck that they start raising the prices. So the other thing is, I think that those entrepreneurs who did well with marketing were, first of all, creative with marketing, but also they tried to look kind of out a little bit, kind of not just what's working now, but what is going to be working 3 months, 6 months, 8 months from now, kind of, and again, kind of that's tricky because you don't know, but they were very open to that. So, about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, kind of video snippets, kind of on Facebook became, and now they kind of are dominant, right? Nobody almost looks at an ad on Facebook that's not. Back then, you thought, well, why would anybody watch, kind of a video snippet for 10 or 15 seconds? Kind of, it's like, or even five, kind of very short ones. Well, it turns out they're actually quite effective. So I think that, kind of as an entrepreneur, when it comes to marketing, you have to be, kind of looking out in the future. You have to be open to new ideas. You have to be watching what's going on in the marketplace. Now, it might be kind of hard for your members, but maybe you're advising them. Maybe you're helping to think. Oh, by the way, I was talking to somebody recently, a guy who actually started a digital marketing company that focused early on Facebook, and it still does a lot on Facebook for its clients. But it said, TikTok may be the latest thing. I mean, I'm not on TikTok. I don't know kind of what, but he's saying kind of what he was a valuable thing. He says, I don't know how big TikTok is going to be, but I'm starting to experiment on it for my customers. And actually, he's also started a small, kind of DTC vitamin company. He's saying, I want to experiment on it because that might be the next big thing. And I want to be there before everybody else is there. So I think that, again, an entrepreneur is kind of those that succeeded were constantly trying to kind of look out, and it's challenging. In the moment, you're worried about what are my sales going to be like this week or next month, right? But even when you do that, you have to have either you have to be able to, or you have to have somebody in your team who's trying to help think a little bit into the future. I'm not talking 5 years into the future. I mean, that's kind of like, that's rocket, kind of Elon Musk and, kind of making, kind of electric cars. I'm talking, kind of 6 months or a year into the future, kind of how, might, kind of the terms of engagement change, and how do I try to think about that? How do I try to get ahead of the curve? Yeah.
I read I hate to quote without remembering where the source was, but I just had read it today or yesterday that speaking to the shorter clips on Facebook or even the shorter TikTok videos, that the human adult attention span a decade or so ago was 20 minutes long, and now it's 9 seconds. I don't know how true that is. I can't remember the source, but even just we kind of can see that in culture, that it's at least shrinking and dwindling to just about nothing.
Whatever the number is, yeah, right.
So that's an important kind of look around the corner thing, like you were talking about. So thinking that 6 to 12 months in advance of how am I going to market effectively in a culture where it's harder to get attention. It's cheaper to get attention than ever, but harder to keep it.
Yes, right. And yes, and then kind of creating that connection so that once you get that attention, once you succeed, you want to try to bind that, and to the extent that you can use data analytics, and there are a lot of data analytics companies out there to analyze, kind of what does this customer want, but kind of what do other people like them? What does that tell me about who else I might try to reach out to? There's a company that sells called eSalon that sells customized hair coloring. Really customized. They produce their own. They kind of buy all the things and they produce their own, but they tailor. They can make tens of hundreds of thousands, depending on kind of changing the formulation by like a 10% of this tint or that tint or whatever. And what they found was by kind of looking at renewal rates, okay, they would find occasionally that people who bought this mix, kind of had a lower renewal rate than people who bought this slightly different mix in the coloring. And so sometimes without actually telling the customer, who had kind of say, because what does a customer know exactly what the mix is? They would tweak the mix by a very small amount. And they found that when they did that, the renewal rate for those people kind of increased. So then they started switching it more. They would try to anticipate what their customer wanted. And again, every company, every product is slightly different. But I think the lesson there, that kind of read the data, you're collecting a lot of data. You're having a lot of interaction with your customer, to the extent that you can, kind of be, kind of use that data to your competitive advantage. that is one of the things that distinguishes direct to consumer. Kind of, are people liking this? How much are they renewing? How many of the people are coming back? If they're not coming back, can you figure out why they're not coming back? Because the more you can get that recurring revenue without having to recapture that consumer. I mean, the people at Eastline told me, he says, look, we don't really make money until, kind of a customer orders like the fourth time. So it's really important to us to do that. And then, and also we found that, kind of after the eighth time, the chance that people are going to stay with us is going to be, kind of much higher. So we really want to concentrate and be in contact with those people from the fourth to the eighth time. Are you happy? Kind of, what do you need? What can we provide you? Kind of, so again, there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. Whatever business you're in, if you're in the direct-to-consumer business of figuring out how to stay connected with those people and use the data to keep them as customers, because if you get a long-term customer, kind of that really helps your profit margins because you're reducing your marketing costs.
That's right. As much as I want to, man, there's so, like everything you give, there's like 10 questions that could come out of it. We could talk for hours, but I guess before we kind of move to some of those other questions I have, customer acquisition. What does that look like for a lot of D2C brands? Obviously, there's a lot of testing that goes along with that, to your point. And then, the agility of being able to move quickly in a pivot. But, what are some of the things that we've noticed that's been working for a D2C brand that's trying to take a business online? Customer acquisition, what have you seen and what have you noticed in there?
Yeah. So again, I think we can talk about a lot of stuff. It all starts with the product and having the right product and right value. You need, and that is, kind of what can, kind of how can I address that? So this guy who I was talking about, who started a digital marketing company, now has started his own company. His name is Jesse Puggi, very smart guy. And he said, I wanted to get something kind of that's in kind of the healthcare area. And again, it started with the product. And it wasn't vitamins. I think I said vitamins, but I think he sells, kind of a lot of people have gas buildup. Okay, sorry talking about your program. But anyway, he said, he went to actually before he even did that, he went to some doctors that he knew. He says, what are your customers, what do your patients complain about? And, kind of one of the things was gas buildup. I was, what can we do? Can we provide a product that will be like, kind of one pill that will kind of solve that for people? And kind of formulated that, kind of talking with doctors. So right now you're starting with the product. And then you have to say, okay, who is our customer, our target customer, and how do we reach that customer? And again, they've done a lot of that using, kind of Facebook and Google marketing and using the analytics. So I think that, kind of make sure that you understand, kind of how can Google or at Facebook analytics marketing help me target the most likely customers. And I think that kind of that's, kind of whether TikTok or whatever, kind of Snapchat, all these things are, kind of there's, kind of the truism of the digital era is that there's constant, kind of things are constantly evolving. So you have to be, but in the end, what you want to, kind of focus on as far as customer acquisition is how do I get the most bang for my buck? And the most bang for buck is figuring out, kind of let's target those likely customers, the most likely customers early on, using the analytics that these companies have developed. And, kind of that is, kind of the best way to think about that, kind of who is my target customer? So this company that my, kind of the guy I wrote about, kind of, and I haven't written about this new startup. He said, we're doing well. He said, because we're very focused on, kind of figuring out who that customer is, delivering that product to that customer. And then when the best thing that you can get, kind of is obviously word of mouth. It's a little bit tricky to get word of mouth, but if you get word of mouth where friends are recommending it, and if you go to a lot of the sites of the startups, you can see customer testimonials. And I think that that's really important because, and Eastline used that very well too, because they got out there. You can do it with local, kind of publications. Sometimes local publications are looking for, kind of stories about, kind of the latest new ways of marketing, whatever, then it becomes a little bit of the flywheel effect where, kind of it reinforces, it's self-reinforcing.
Yep, absolutely. Hey guys, and listen to that bit of advice for sure. Because if Larry's telling you you can get in the newspaper with a great story, he probably knows a thing or two about
Right.
the opportunity there, right? So one of the challenges, well, first let me back up to one of the mindsets. Um, a number of our clients and even just our members here, they're used to doing business a very certain way, where it's like it's face to face. This is how my granddaddy taught me to do it. This is how we do it. So getting online has already been a bit of a struggle. But you mentioned kind of the think about if you're in the buyer's shoes, not just your shoes,
Right.
what would that experience? What's that problem? What's that experience you want them to have? How to connect? So in an age where things are going high digital and it's hard to get that tactile familiarity, how are you noticing that brands are thinking about the user experience and staying in contact in an actually meaningful way?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I think that is different and to the benefit of people who are selling, kind of direct to consumer today versus 10 years ago. And it's a little bit challenging because it's a little bit more crowded and, cost of customer acquisition because marketing is cost a little bit higher. But the comfort level of people buying things online, all sorts of things online, has increased dramatically. Um, uh, whether it's with Amazon or direct to consumer. I don't know. In some, I think overall e-commerce accounts for 15 to 20% of retail sales. That's like astonishing. It went up. It got a little bit of boost during COVID. Some categories are very high. Kind of they're like especially in commodity stuff like tech products. It's the same. You can kind of get it, and it's probably 30 to 40% online. So one of the things, kind of it's really valuable is that, kind of even if you're not that comfortable with it, know that there are a lot of people out there who aren't very comfortable with buying stuff online. And so you just have to figure out. So they're actually kind of much more open to buying things from you online than they might have been, kind of in the past. And then one of the things I look at is, kind of as a customer, kind of what is the communication that I like and what are the interactions that I like. And I think that it helps keep in mind. So Dollar Shave Club makes it very easy. Before they send you a shipment, they send you an email and say your next shipment is coming. And if you want to say, oh God, you know what, I was on vacation, I didn't shave very much, I don't really need, I've got like, I didn't even use the ones that you sent me, all the ones that you sent me last time. Make it very easy to click with 1 or 2 clicks to change the delivery date. I want to delay it for a week, I want to delay it for 2 weeks, I want to delay it for a month. Now you think, well, why would that be good for them to kind of make it easy for you to delay a shipment to them, right? Kind of how crazy is that? You know what? It makes me a more loyal customer. So I know that I don't have to get, kind of stacks and stacks, and then I'm just going to shut off the account, right? Screw it, I don't have to deal with these people anymore. So, kind of again, if you're, one of the things, if, kind of if you're, selling steaks to people online, obviously having a subscription so that people kind of get something, kind of every month or every few weeks from you, that's great because then you're not, but also make it easy for them to change their order. Kind of, again, it's counterintuitive, but I think that, you build customer loyalty when you're thinking about, oh, as a customer, I would like it to be that way, as opposed to as a producer. So, kind of that binds me to Dollar Shave Club in a way that, kind of might not. So, kind of similarly, kind of Warby Parker, I'm a customer. My wife uses Z-Salon. We tried out a lot of these products and stuck with the ones that we like. With Warby Parker, they keep my information online about what my prescription is, what it's changed, what I bought. If I call them with a question, kind of they're very, very good and very open. I mean, obviously they become a little bit bigger company, and so some of your entrepreneurs, kind of are pretty small. But I think that the main thing is to, kind of keep in touch with those customers. I mean, Warby Parker, look, I'm not buying new glasses every, kind of a year. I'm at the age where my eyes aren't changing that quickly, but they probably are for some people. They'll send me an email, kind of every month. Hey, have you checked out our new frames? Kind of we got a lot of new designs. Would you be interested in taking a look at that? Dollar Shave Club, kind of has, again, instead of just selling razors, they're selling shaving cream. They're selling, kind of a lot of ancillary products. Oh, would you want to add this to, kind of your shipment, kind of. So I think that again, for your kind of for farmers trying to, kind of how can I have regular, and you can set all this stuff up with MailChimp or whatever, how do I stay in contact with these customers so that, kind of, and it doesn't require a lot of work. A lot of it can be pretty automatic. But those are the companies that I continue to do business with, are the ones that, kind of treat me, kind of as, kind of a part of the, family is a strong word, but a part of the community. I think the community is better. You're part of our community, and so we're going to stay in touch with you, and we're going to make it easy for you to do business with us. And we're going to try to do business with you on your terms that work for us, of course, but on your terms. And again, I kind of keep going back to the, kind of Dollar Shave Club, kind of example where it's easy to kind of delay a shipment, kind of, and also listen to your customers. I mean, one of the things, kind of Harry's, which is a competitor, and I think I mentioned this in the book too, it kept hearing from people, oh God, kind of, I usually, kind of throwing in my travel bag, I'm throwing a razor, and sometimes I go in and I kind of pick it out and I kind of cut my finger and everything. And they saw that, and they saw several people saying this, well, why don't we sell a little cover, right? Or either they sold it for $1 or they provided it or whatever, so you can, kind of when you're traveling, you can put that little plastic cover over the top of your blade again. So if there's a way to kind of learn from your customers about what they like, oh, I would like, oh, if you would do this, kind of, sometimes if you just ask customers, hey, kind of survey, what are you liking? If you would like us to do something different, what would it be? Kind of, different cuts, different, kind of regularity, kind of frequency of shipping, kind of all those things. That might be helpful. Would you like us to sell sauces? Kind of like, should we sell a barbecue sauce to you? Right? Again, these are ancillary things, that you can, kind of add, but kind of always try to approach it from what does the customer want? And, there's nobody better to tell you what the customer wants than the customer, right?
Perfect. Yes, that gives so many of us on here something to actually think through when we're trying to think of customer acquisition, when we're trying to think of back end and lifetime value, when we're trying to think of how do we keep a customer. So that was incredible. If I had to pick, I have 3 more questions if you have a few minutes.
Okay, sure.
And one of them's kind of a fun question, which is, so a lot of people, as they're coming into our ecosystem, learning how to, ship beef across the country with dry ice and how to get a sale online. So many people think it can't be done. Like, no one's going to buy beef online. It can't be done. What are some of kind of the weirder things you might have seen that just doesn't seem like people would buy in this manner as a direct consumer type business? So any of those?
Well, one I wrote about, kind of healthcare is kind of an interesting area and interesting products. I mean, again, the eyeglasses, kind of how do we overcome what that is with, kind of, because you got to put it on. So they had the idea, send it in. Again, hearing aids, high priced product, kind of, or somebody, I mean, talk about, because it's one thing to buy eyeglasses for $100, $200, $300, kind of for a hearing aid. And there was a startup called Eargo that came in with a much lower, kind of a third to a half the price of if you would go into an audiologist. And it was something that was kind of fit in the ear. It was like, how do you get people to buy that stuff, kind of online? And again, I think that it was, kind of, there was a little bit the price value, okay? But also they're very big on the customer service. Kind of making sure that they had a call center where you could call in, that you could, they would help you, these things were very easily adjusted, but they could help you, kind of tell you if you don't really know, if you're not getting an adjustment right. And of course, then there's the return, kind of policy, which is a good return policy. But I thought that was very interesting, kind of selling something as complicated as hearing aid online. If you could do that, then you should be able to sell a steak online. And kind of what is it? Kind of, do you? I think that kind of a steak is kind of a low thing, because if you don't like it, then you just don't buy it the next time around. kind of a hearing aid, if you keep it, more than a month or with the period before it's returned, then it's going to be a little bit trickier, right? It's a high price thing. And it's like, oh, I got this thing that costs, even if it was lower priced, it cost me $1,500 or $2,000. Kind of a stake is like, try it, you'll like it. And if you don't, you don't want to say this, then you can cancel it. You just don't continue. But I think that, kind of having that, I would just, as we talk about this, I mean, maybe you kind of say, again, creating that connection. Here's how we cook our steak, kind of, here's a good grilling method, right? Kind of, or here's a recipe for chimichurri sauce that you're going to love with our steak, kind of, again, making it more than simply a product. It becomes an experience. And I can't emphasize that more, kind of creating that sense of community, that sense of experience. It's really important, especially when you're not dealing directly with somebody, kind of in a store.
Yeah, for sure. Quick anecdote here. Dan Kennedy, direct response marketer, talked about how, somehow in culture it became cool to wear glasses and they made them cooler. But hearing aids has been really tough of a product because it's a sign of aging. It's a sign of supposed weakness, and it's hard to make that cool. But I think Eargo has actually done a pretty good job. Their product is discreet, but they actually, the device actually looks pretty cool too. You wouldn't mind having in your ear.
Yeah. And I think that stigma maybe will kind of go over time. The one challenge with the stigma is it's that, kind of, it is mostly associated with aging. So kind of getting that, but now they've got, kind of the government has opened it up so you can buy, kind of over the counter hearing aids and all. But you do want, kind of, that's mostly for people with mild to moderate hearing loss. If you have serious hearing loss, you do want something like Eargo or whatever. But again, technology is helping deal with a lot of those things because you can take a hearing test online. They can kind of give you feedback. They can kind of get on, kind of, if you have a call center with trained people, they can get on the phone with you and look at you like this and say, okay, let's go over the, kind of the settings and all that. So, every different product has its own challenges, right?
Absolutely. And it takes a little bit of the creativity to think through it and flexibility.
Again, and it helps to start with, I'm the customer. Okay. What do I want? What about this experience, this product or whatever is something that I would want? I just kind of keep coming back to that because that's so critical.
Yeah, but it's so easily missed when we're thinking of, what are the inputs into the animal, harvesting, all of that. It's easy to forget about there's an end consumer to the product.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's one that, again, no pressure on this question because it's just more of a curiosity. But as online D2C brands are popping up, I'm sure there are different agencies that are popping up to serve those needs in a very different way than we've seen maybe from previous decades. Do you know of any agencies we could be looking into to kind of glean some inspiration from that serve D2C type brands?
I'm a little bit out of date on that. I'll be honest with you. The company that I did profile that had done a good job, but they switched to doing a little bit more with the bigger companies and smaller companies. His name is Ampush. But so you can look at kind of who are they working with, and then you can see. I mean, it's very easy to say who are they working with, and then looking for their ads and how they're working online. So I can't direct you to some of those, kind of specifically because I'm a little bit out of date on that. But there is a kind of a quite an array from big to small. There are like a lot of single operators. But if you're doing with the single operators, the guys who, kind of are sitting, kind of in their home office and helping you, and some of them can be very good. Just make sure that kind of who they've worked with and how they've approached it and who they sell and kind of deal with those people so you can know exactly what kind of experience you're getting. But because you can get a very good experience. I mean, this is data analytics is what it is. I mean, you don't have to have a huge infrastructure, okay? You just have to be smart in the way thinking about it. So just as there are D2C product entrepreneurs, there are D2C marketing entrepreneurs too. And size is not necessarily the difference maker. It's smarts and ways of thinking about things.
Right. It's how you interpret that data that you're getting, for sure.
Right. And understanding the platforms and the changing different platforms. I think that's the other thing. It's got to make sure that, kind of if you're dealing with somebody who can help you think 3 to 6 months ahead, you should be trying TikTok, or no, it's too early for TikTok, or you should be trying Snap kind of because Snapchat works for your type of customer or it doesn't. I mean, I think it's making sure that, whoever you're kind of working with understands the platforms and the platforms that are best for your product.
Well said. That's appreciated. All right, I kind of want to wrap up with this question. So in our program, we teach a lot of direct response. We've really put a lot of emphasis on just the copy and the client journey, but the branding thing is, which is why you're here, helping us with how to think around the branding. But if we can, let's kind of pull back a little bit, drawing from the book, drawing from your storied career as a journalist in business and economics. How would you define brand?
Oh, wow, great question, big question, the ultimate question. And I don't think that there is one thing that makes for a strong brand identity. I think that it can be different things for different products. Okay, that's why there's price, there's value, there's experience. Again, and I think that a lot of the DTC brands, kind of Warby Parker being a great example, that experience. Again, they knew that it would be probably hard to sell online. The founder of Warby Parker told me, you know what? An eyeglass is kind of a commodity product, right? Everybody has different frame, different design, okay, and kind of the quality of the lenses can change. But what's happened in the past 10 or 20 years is that you have a lot of everybody's doing a lot of contract manufacturing for that product. So the frames are being made at the same factory. The cheap ones, and they're using pretty much the same materials. And ditto, the frame quality, the quality of all products. Just think about cars, right? It's hard to get a bad car nowadays. I mean, you might have a preference for this car or that car and everything, but there aren't a lot of lemons. Just kind of for most manufacturing, kind of quality assurance has increased. Because factories, kind of are set up so that they can, if there's anything that's going wrong, they spot it right away. You don't get a lot of bad stuff made. Okay, so in a world where a lot of products are, kind of commodity, what is that brand? The brand is defined a lot by experience. So let's make that experience like a great experience for you. We can make this, and Warby Parker put a lot of emphasis on making that experience good. The second thing I would say kind of about a brand is like community, kind of getting back to what, you want to make it sense that you have a sense, you are like-minded to us. You like our product because it's a good product. It has to start with that, okay? But this makes you feel good. You're buying this product makes you feel good because you feel that you're getting good value. You're getting, kind of a good experience. But in the end, you kind of identify with this product. And I think that Warby Parker and Dollar Shave Club particularly has done a very good job with that. But there's an opportunity for kind of farmers selling it, kind of creating that brand identity. What is our identity? We're organic. We're we're holistic in our approach. Kind of you're supporting small business, whatever. Creating a brand identity is kind of what are those things that are going to make consumers feel good and want to come back. It's because they have this image in this. I mean, you think kind of even going back, the Marlboro Man, right? Kind of, hey, look, smoking is out and everything, but there's few brands that had a stronger identity. Kind of, they didn't show the Marlboro Man getting lung cancer, kind of, but which he probably did. But they used the marketing to create a strong brand identity. And I think that kind of what do we stand for? Kind of, I think that when you're marketing people, you focus on kind of hitting that message, directing that message. Kind of, this is what you're getting. This is what we stand for. And it's really, really important. And kind of, it's again, it's different things for different people. It's different things for different products. But it's usually not just one thing. But there can't be 10 things. Kind of, usually it's, kind of 2 or 3 things, kind of that you want, kind of for Dollar Shave Club, if you look at that video, kind of it was, kind of price, convenience were like very critical. You know, kind of we're going to deliver to you. You're not going to have to deal with kind of, and you're going to go to, you know, kind of you're going to get a good price, and you're going to get and also I would say quality, a good quality. Again, he would say it's as good as Gillette. You know, kind of that's debatable, but it was good quality. So there were three things, right? Get beyond three things, you're probably, you know, kind of not going to have a strong brand identity. But you have to really have in your mind, what are the brand identity things? How do we create those, you know, kind of that affinity?
That is such a great point. Narrowing it down to three things, plus three legs of anything is a great tripod, right? That's
Yeah,
just, there's just strength with that.
exactly.
So, Larry, this has been an absolute honor and privilege to host you today. Thanks for wanting to even jump on and serve.
Great conversations, great conversations. I mean, obviously you've thought a lot about this stuff, and it makes it easy to talk about when you have somebody who really kind of can ask smart questions, and we can really go deep on it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, we could keep going, but we're not gonna. And plus, I could super nerd out on a lot of this stuff with you. So that might not be super fun for everybody else, but I just really appreciate your time and willingness to serve the farming community. And Larry, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Absolutely. Guys, pick up the book, $1 Billion Brand Club right now on Amazon. We have a link in the comments, and make sure, just as important as purchasing the book, that you leave a review for Larry. Thanks to Larry for hanging out.
Jared, thanks.
Take care.